Magical Princess took me by surprise. I went into it thinking it would be something chill, and in no time I was already making mistakes that could have been easily avoided if I knew then what I know now. The truth is, this game has a depth that only reveals itself when you start paying attention to the details, and it took me a while to understand how things really work. So I decided to gather here the tips I wish I had found earlier, things the game doesn't explain directly and that make a huge difference in your progress. I hope this helps you have a better experience than I did at the start. I'm Mary, and the video is about to begin. If there's one thing this game does very well, it's deceiving you. You think everything is under control. Alice is doing well at the academy, working at the bakery, earning some extra income, and then suddenly she's robbing the very place where she works at the request of a bad influence. This happens because Magical Princess has a morality system that is constantly breathing down your neck, and the nighttime period is where it catches you most off guard. Night in this game isn't just a matter of a darker aesthetic. It completely changes what is available for Alice to do and who she will cross paths with. Croy, for example, appears much more frequently at night, and she has a natural talent for pulling your daughter to the wrong side. It's not that she's necessarily a clear villain from the start, but the choices she inspires accumulate points on the dark side of Alice's morality in a way you barely notice until you've already gone too far. Working at the bakery at night seems like a safe choice. After all, it's an honest job, pays well, and Alice still learns something in the process. However, the bakery's nighttime atmosphere is completely different from the daytime, and the situations that arise during these shifts can easily slide into dangerous territory. At some point in the game, she might end up getting involved in a robbery in that exact location, which, besides slapping you in the face with irony, consistently pushes her morality down. The most human detail of it all? She feels guilty and leaves some coins behind. This kind of nuance is what makes the game so good. So, balance is essential here. And it's not just about avoiding a bad ending, it's about maintaining control over a character who can literally become the demon queen if you let nighttime shifts take over her routine. During the day, school and the right friendships naturally pull her toward good. At night, any slip-up becomes fertile ground for the evil route. Alternate nighttime jobs with safer activities. Pay attention to who Alice is hanging out with during those hours. And most importantly, if Croy shows up with a proposal at midnight, you probably already know what will happen if you say yes. There's a mechanic that many people overlook without realizing it, and it can completely change your gaming experience. The title features over 30 characters scattered throughout the academy, each with their own personality, story, and even feelings for Alice. If you simply ignore most of them, focusing only on training attributes and attending classes, you will miss one of the richest layers the game to offer. The tip here is simple but requires attention throughout the entire run. Invest time in relationships. Every time you deepen a friendship with certain characters, their affinity with Alice grows. And when that affinity reaches a high enough level, the game recognizes that character as her fated partner. This isn't just a pretty title. This choice actively redirects the plot, opens exclusive dialogues, and can lead to romantic endings that you simply won't see otherwise. What impressed me about this mechanic is that it doesn't clearly warn you when it's happening. There's no visible counter on the screen saying 2 more dates and you hit the threshold. You notice it in the date scenes, the characters' reactions, and the small changes in dialogue. It's the kind of thing the game lets you discover organically, and that makes all the difference for those who like to explore without spoilers. So, before starting a new run with a total focus on stats, think about Alice's schedule from a different perspective. Which character do you really want her to connect with? Because with over 50 endings in the game, those involving a fated partner are some of the most narratively complete. It's well worth testing different characters in separate runs, because each fated partner takes the plot to a completely different place. If there's one thing Magical Princess is unforgiving about, it's wasting time. The game is divided into monthly segments, and each month is basically a window of opportunity that once closed, never returns. Many people come into the game with the mindset of farming as much money as possible, working every available job, and leaving the rest for later. Then they reach the end and realize Alice's attributes are weak, friendships haven't evolved, and the ending was mediocre. It doesn't have to be that way. The monthly planning menu exists precisely for you to sit down, breathe, and think strategically before acting. You can and should organize classes, jobs, leisure activities, and character interactions in a balanced way within the same month. The question isn't how much money you will accumulate in that period, but what that month will build towards Alice's overall development. A well-planned month can advance weeks of progress in attributes and relationships at the same time. What differentiates a casual player from one who will get the best endings is exactly this long-term vision. Every activity you put in the calendar has an energy and time cost, so putting too much work into a single month means giving up classes that evolve attributes or dates that deepen affinity with characters. Think of the calendar as a resource as valuable as the game's money itself, because in practice, it is. So before confirming any month's planning, look at the long-term goal you want to achieve. Want a romantic ending? Prioritize interactions. Want a career ending? Balance classes and jobs. The game has many endings precisely because it rewards different playstyles, but all of them require consistency over the months. Those who improvise month to month reach the end without understanding why things didn't work out. There's a moment in Magical Princess that almost everyone goes through. You're at the academy looking at the course catalog, and the teachers start piling on warnings about how magic courses are risky, demanding, and that Alice might not be prepared. It's a moment of real pressure within the game, and it was placed there on purpose. The thing is, most players back down at this point, and that's exactly where mediocre builds start to be created. If you want an Alice who truly masters magic, the answer is direct. Intelligence is your main attribute, and the magic courses at the academy are the investment that will make all of this make sense. Don't try to balance too much at the beginning by putting points into strength or charm, thinking you'll need them later. The game rewards clarity of purpose, and the mage build requires you to trust it from the first month of planning. What few realize is that there's a layer of content in the game that only appears when Alice reaches a solid level in magic. Dialogues that didn't exist before emerge, characters react in different ways, and some story events simply don't happen if you never prioritize this path. It's the game rewarding you for making the difficult choice back at the beginning when everyone was telling you to back off. So the next time a teacher appears on the screen warning you about the difficulty of a magic course, remember this: he isn't protecting you, he's testing you. Keep intelligence high, fill the calendar with the right classes, and let Alice grow in the path you chose for her. The best moments of this build appear for those who had the courage not to change course at the first sign of difficulty. The time loop mechanic isn't just a replayability feature thrown in front of you. It is the heart of the entire experience. The game was built to be played multiple times, and with over 50 different endings depending on how you raised Alice, every choice you made in your first run was in fact a lesson. And the key shift here is exactly that. Stop treating the ending you got as a failure or as the wrong one. Think with me. If you let Alice do nighttime jobs, if she ended up falling into the path of evil because of Croy, or if her relationship with her cooled because you focused only on training, all of that was information. In the next run, you already know exactly where the moral scale starts to tip, and then the game becomes a puzzle, much smarter than it seems on the surface. The practical secret is this: before starting a new playthrough, make a mental note, or literally write it down on paper, of the 3 moments that most defined the ending you got. Was it the classes she attended, the nights out, the trust you built or failed to build? With an 8-hour loop per run, you have enough time to make surgical adjustments without needing to change everything from scratch. What impresses me about this mechanic is that the game respects you as a player. It doesn't punish you for exploring the darker or less obvious endings. On the contrary, there is a whole layer of mystery linked to the Crimson Moon and the monsters that only starts to make sense after a few lifetimes. So, embrace the loop. The perfect ending isn't the destination, it's the reward for those who had the patience to learn from every version of the story they lived before. Ignoring the skill tree in the first few hours was a mistake I felt firsthand. The system works like this. Every time you level up a status, whether it's stamina, intelligence, charisma, or sensitivity, you gain a skill point. It seems simple, but many people don't realize these points accumulate much faster than they seem, and then they end up sitting on a pile of points without knowing where to spend them. The recommendation I learned is that you should prioritize max energy and pay raise right at the beginning, before anything else. Max energy completely changes the pace of the game because it gives you more actions per day, and pay raise accelerates your financial progression in a way you'll be grateful for when you reach the more expensive parts of the game. These two skills together create a solid foundation for you to grow without getting stuck all the time. Once you have this foundation in place, then you can start thinking about more specific builds. If you like magic, especially fire and dark magic, the fire starter skill is essential and practically mandatory on this path. It boosts your fire spells in a very noticeable way and opens up synergies with dark magic builds that become absurdly strong in the mid and late game. The key point here is not to waste your first skill points on situational skills before securing the quality of life ones. Magical Princess has a long progression curve, and investing correctly at the start makes all the difference between a smooth run and one where you're always playing catch-up. Think of the first points as an investment, not an expense. One of the things that impacts your result the most is exactly how you use each month of the calendar. Each month is a window of opportunity, and wasting it by choosing classes or jobs on autopilot is a mistake that directly affects the ending you will achieve. Before choosing any class, pay attention to the dialogues with your daughter. She literally gives you tips about what she is interested in at that moment. And when you choose classes that align with those interests, her stat progression accelerates in a very noticeable way. It's the game telling you which path to follow, and ignoring that is playing against yourself unnecessarily. Jobs are where many people make big mistakes because they only look at the financial return. Money matters, yes, but every available job is tied to specific stats and also increases affinity with certain NPCs. Depending on the ending you're aiming for, having high affinity with certain characters at the right time can be the difference between getting stuck with a mediocre result or unlocking something much better. Therefore, before starting a new month, stop for a second and think about the goal. What ending do you want? Which stats still need to grow? Is there an important NPC you need to strengthen your relationship with? With these 3 questions answered, your monthly calendar becomes a tool of progression and not just a repetitive routine. Magical Princess rewards those who think long-term. If there's a system that seems optional but is absolutely central to the game experience, it's the affinity system with NPCs. Characters like Chocolate and Miss Anne aren't just there to add flavor to the narrative. They directly influence which routes become available to you. Ignoring these relationships in the early hours is practically locking yourself out of content without realizing it. The gift mechanic is deeper than it seems at first glance. Every correct gift already increases affinity normally, but when you have high charisma and the genius gift giver skill unlocked, every gift you give comes with an extra affinity bonus. This is why investing in charisma early, something I mentioned before with the skill tree, has a ripple effect that goes much further than you imagine when you start playing. What really makes this system interesting is that some routes, including the romantic routes and the Yuri options, require not only high affinity, but also that you participated in specific events with those characters. It's not enough to just give gifts on autopilot. You need to be present at the right moments in their story, which means that planning your monthly calendar, as I mentioned before, directly impacts this as well. My practical tip is to identify early on which character or characters are central to the ending you want and focus on them consistently from the start. Trying to recover lost affinity at the end of the game is difficult and sometimes impossible, depending on how far you are in the story. Magical Princess is a game that rewards attention and intention, and relationships are where this is most evident. Magical Princess has a narrative structure that works like an iceberg. What you see on the surface is only a fraction of what is happening underneath. Most of the game's most important events are flag-driven, meaning they only appear when a specific combination of stats and previous choices has been met. The problem is that the game rarely warns you when you've missed a flag. It simply moves on as if nothing happened. When a dialogue you expected doesn't appear, or when a scene another player mentioned never activated in your run, the answer is almost always in your stats or in the bond level with a specific character. It's worth pausing, checking which stat is most related to that event, and adjusting your strategy in the coming months. It seems like a lot of work, but it's exactly this kind of attention that separates a common run from one where you really feel that the story responded to your choices. Your daughter is the best indicator the game gives you about what's to come. Her lines change subtly depending on the paths she is inclined to follow, and paying attention to these details is almost like reading the game map out loud. When she starts mentioning certain themes or expressing curiosity about something specific, it's the game telling you that a flag is almost ready to be activated and that it's worth investing in that direction. What I like most about the system is that it makes every run feel truly different. You're not just completing a checklist, you're reading the signs the game gives you and responding to them intentionally. Magical Princess is a simulator that rewards those who listen more than those who just execute, and the story events are the clearest proof of that. Reaching the rarest endings in Magical Princess isn't luck, it's planning. These endings require a very specific combination of near-max stats in certain areas, a determined morality alignment, and, in many cases, an advanced romance or friendship with a specific character. When you put together everything that was discussed before, skill tree, monthly calendar, affinity, and story flags, you realize that every system in the game is actually pointing toward this final moment. My honest recommendation is that you don't try to go straight for the hidden endings or true endings on your first run. I know the temptation is huge, but the normal endings exist precisely to teach you the logic of the game. They show which stats matter for which results, how morality influences the outcome, and the weight of each relationship in the narrative. Skipping this phase is like trying to learn a complex recipe without understanding the basic ingredients. Write everything down. Seriously, this isn't an exaggeration. A simple spreadsheet with the combinations that worked, the stats you had, the affinity level with each relevant NPC, and the morality choices throughout the game will save hours of frustration. Magical Princess has a number of variables that make it almost impossible to remember everything just by head, and having this record transforms the exploration of endings into a much more satisfying and less random experience. What makes the hidden and true endings so special is exactly the fact that they require you to understand the game in depth before accessing them. When you finally meet all the conditions and that ending appears for the first time, the feeling is completely different from simply following a step-by-step guide. You built that result, and Magical Princess makes sure you feel it.